It is easy for you and I to get lost in our own circumstances. My friends, always remember that our God is faithful and He will never leave us alone. What are you grateful for to the Lord? I am grateful to God for the gift of life and how He has grown me and to loving Him and desiring to serve Him with all that I am. Friends, thinking through the seasons of life, it can be quite challenging for most of us because it leads us to a season of doubting and questioning God. Even to the staunchest believer in faith, they can tremble over the issues of life and ask, God, where are you? Over time, we are prone to forget. For a Christian believer, it is a danger because that puts you in a condition where you don't remember God's faithfulness in your life. Throughout Scripture, we study and read about God's people, how they are tragically forgetful. A couple of months back, we started studying the book of Exodus in our devotion time at work. It is fascinating to see how God's hand and presence was always with the Israelites. But throughout their journey from captivity, they could easily forget. And they started to grumble, question, murmur, and wish to have stayed in Egypt. This brings to me to the theme of our reflection this week. Don't you remember? Let's take a look at a couple of chapters and verses in Exodus and appreciate the concept of this theme. Exodus 14, verses 10 to 12. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "What was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." This complaining happens right after the Israelites are set free from captivity and they are yet to cross the Red Sea. Going forth, Exodus 15, verses 22 to 24. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, What are we to drink? Exodus 16, verses 1 to 3. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month, they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve us and the entire assembly to death." It is just fascinating. Continuing, Exodus 17, verses 2 to 3. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt and make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Exodus 32, verse 1 to 6. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come and make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what had happened to him. What has happened to him?" Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with tow. They said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord. So the next day people arose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down and ate and drank and got up to indulge in revelry. Don't you think that you and I are often like the Israelites? Yes, we are. What a shame. Forgetful, grumbling. I can just imagine how many times Moses felt when he was challenged, when he was brought, when he came to meet all these complaints. So many times we are hard pressed on every side, and we ask God to guide us through the challenges we go through in life. And at his opportune time, he answers us, and in his perfect time, he rescues us. And our hearts are filled with joy, and we sing praises to him. But as soon as we face a challenge or a trial, we quickly forget how God has been gracious and has been loving to us and has been faithful to us. So we become anxious, we become worried, unsettled, murmuring, questioning, just like the Israelites did. And we end up complaining. Notice that in the journey of the Israelites and through the time of Exodus, God made a covenant with them. He was to be their God, and the Israelites were to remember that how he freed them from slavery, and they were to worship him alone. So God gave Moses the 10 Commandments for instruction to the Israelite community. Time and time again, God knows that you and I are forgetful. He commands us to do certain things that will serve as reminders of all the things he has done, just like he instructed the Israelites through the 10 Commandments. Now, remembering builds our faith and confidence that the God we serve is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. 1 Samuel chapter 17 verse 32 brings us to a story of David when he's going to encounter a giant, Goliath. And this is what he tells Saul, don't you worry about the Philistine. David told Saul, I'll fight him. David says this with confidence because he had seen, he remembers what God had done for him before. He had got the courage to fight over lions. He had seen God's hand and God's favor and God's presence in his life. So he remembers that when he comes to face the giant, he knows that he will take him down because God is with him. And he goes in the name of the Lord. Psalm 77 verse 11 to 15 says, but then I recall all you have done, O Lord. I remember your wonderful works and deeds of long ago. They are constantly in my thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about your mighty works. O God, your ways are holy. Is there any God as mighty as you? You are the God of great wonders. You demonstrate your awesome power among the nations. By your strong arm, you redeem your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. When you read through these words, the psalmist simply reminds and recalls God's faithfulness in his life. How then can you and I be able to remember his faithfulness in our lives? There are 5 practical ways we can take away as a reminder. I highlighted them in the 5 T's. The first T is think. For a moment, think about how God has shown his power in your life. The times he's been guiding you, the time he's provided exceedingly, the time he's answered prayer. Take time to think about all that the God has done in your life. The second T, thank God. Engage your heart in giving thanks to the God who is mighty, who is able to do immeasurably more. Third T, tell. You won't have to stay silent. Once you've spent your time remembering and thanking God for those great things, then your memory should overflow by telling others around you of those great things that the Lord has done in your life. You remember in Joshua chapter 4, verses 21 to 22, Joshua said to the Israelites, in the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Then they can tell them, this is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. So tell people, let them hear of the good news of those amazing things that God has done in your life. The fourth T is tradition. As you think about celebrating a holiday or a birthday, make it a tradition. Consider some of the ways that God has been faithful and incorporate these stories in your daily celebrations of life. And then lastly, the last is transcribe. Transcribe simply means journal down, write down your story. No matter how big or small, let your walk with the Lord be written down, because it just helps you to progress in faith and also bring confidence in what you believe in. But also it encourages you to know that God, who did it before, is able to do it again and again. It is easy for you and I to get lost in our own circumstances. My friends, always remember that our God is faithful and He will never leave us alone. So I invite you to remember. If you ever forget anything, remember that Jesus is faithful. But also remember that the cross, everything was paid for you. So you have a reason to celebrate the faithfulness of Jesus Christ in your life. God bless you.